Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we are making some lamb stew. I love to serve this over grits. It's great for a dinner party or just a cozy meal to have at home. So let's get into this recipe. Okay, so first things first, I completely forgot to set up my tripod, so bear with me with these weird angles during this episode. But I'm starting out with making some roasted garlic. You just cut off the top of a garlic bulb. You add some olive oil, a sprinkle of salt, and wrap it tightly in an aluminum foil. And you let that bake at 375 for about an hour until it gets sweet and golden brown. So I'm doing 2 bulbs, and I'm adding them into the oven now. So now we're gonna get on to seasoning our lamb. I'm using lamb shank, but you can also use leg of lamb or lamb shoulder. Usually you wanna use a tougher part of the meat, it doesn't have a whole lot of fat in it, so it's not as, it doesn't cook quickly or melt in your mouth unless you stew it down for a long time. Lamb shanks are my favorite because they're very personal sized pieces. I'm having a small dinner party, so this was perfect. I'm seasoning it with kosher salt, black pepper, and olive oil. And we're gonna pan sear these so they get nice and brown on the outside. And yeah, it's just perfect. And like I said, I'm serving mine over grits. So I'm not gonna show you guys how to make grits because I feel like you can either follow the directions on the back, or your mom and them should have told you that. But yes, so we're seasoning our lamb shanks. You don't want to use any other seasoning blends because this stew is going to have a lot of flavor going on into it. You don't want to mess up the balance. Oh, and hubby's here. Hey. All right, so next up we have a nice deep pan, and we're going to put some olive oil in it. The fire is at a medium high. We have carrots, celery, onion, and mushrooms. You can also add potatoes if you like. I'm opting out of potatoes because we're going to be eating this over something starchy. So I left the potatoes out, but you can definitely use potatoes if you like. All right. And I like to cut them up in big chunks so that way after it stews down, you still have different textures in there. So now that our pan is nice and hot, we're going to start searing off our lamb shanks, which are over to the side, just marinating in that salt, pepper, olive oil mixture. Also, don't forget to preheat your oven to 375 because we're going to bake our dish. Okay, so now that our pan is smoking, we're going to go ahead and add our lamb in it. Don't overcrowd your pan because you don't want it to sweat, okay? And then when you flip them over, it should be a beautiful golden brown color, like you see here. This is more accurate. You want it to be more beautiful color like that. And then just set it off to the side on a nice plate or dish. You also want to make sure whatever you cook your stew in is an oven safe dish. You want to be able to start off on the stove and finish in the oven. Also, we're going to be using some red wine. Apothic Inferno is my favorite for this dish because the wine was aged in whiskey barrels. So it has this deep umami flavor that goes perfectly for any type of stew, beef stew, lamb stew. Definitely add this to your artillery. Okay, so once all of our lamb is nice and seared, all those delicious juices, we're gonna keep it and go on and add our vegetables to that. It's a little difficult trying to add vegetables with one hand, but trust the process. So I'm adding all my vegetables in: mushrooms, onions, celery, carrots, everything. You don't want to skimp everything out because you want all those to cook down and start marrying and have a nice flavor in that pot. Okay, there we go. Just dump them all in. Let them cook down a little bit. And you want to, stir them frequently, and let them sweat down. But we're going to add some rosemary. Fresh rosemary is completely fine. I'm going in with about 2 tablespoons of rosemary and a tablespoon of dried thyme. You can also use fresh thyme. And then I'm going in with a tablespoon of Italian seasoning. Okay, you stir that up and let it continue to sweat. And then for good measure, I'm adding some garlic powder because it's delicious, and why not? So I added about 2 tablespoons of garlic powder. So after about 10 minutes, I'm going to add 1/4 of a cup of red wine, and I like to cook that out just so that the alcohol can just kind of like bake out. I don't know, it just feels better to me when I do it that way. I don't know. And then I'm going in with about 3 cups of beef broth or beef stock, whatever that you choose. And then after I mix all that up, I'm going to go in with some Better Than Bouillon, which is like beef bouillon cube, but it's a paste and it's so good. I get this from Whole Foods, but I also see them sell them at like Acme or ShopRite. And then I'm going to go in with 2 heaping tablespoons of this beef base, okay? If you don't have the beef base, you can use the bouillon cubes. You want to use 3 bouillon cubes, okay? But if you have the beef base, 2 heaping tablespoons. So while I'm letting that simmer a bit, I am going to switch my pan because I realize I'm running out of space. So you can actually put the tomato paste in at an earlier time, but you know, I'm putting it in mine now. I have a little bit more olive oil in the bottom of my pan. I just put an entire can of tomato paste into the pan, and I'm just gonna fry that up, sear that up a little bit, cook that down because it's very acidic. And when you cook it down a little bit, it gets a bit sweeter, which is very nice. And you don't want to skip this step. You want to make sure you cook down your tomato paste. So after about 3 minutes of cooking down my tomato paste, I go ahead and add all of my stew to the larger pot because I realized I didn't have enough space for all of my lamb shanks in that smaller pot, which is why I switched it over. Okay, and so also I'm adding in some bay leaves. But remember, before you add your wine, that's that step when I was sauteing the vegetables and then I added the wine. You can add your tomato paste in during that moment if you like, if you don't want to switch out your pot. I knew I was going to switch out my pot eventually, so that's why I'm doing the tomato paste now. Just a fun fact. Okay, so now once everything is nice and boiling, you want to nestle your beautiful lamb shanks right into that delicious stew. At this time, I took my roasted garlic out of the oven and I'm just going to squeeze an entire bulb into the pot. Let me tell you something. If you have not had fresh roasted garlic, you are missing out in life. Okay? It's delicious. It's sweet. It is like, it's not strong or spicy like how raw garlic is. And it just gives it a nice depth of flavor as well. Like, don't skip out on this. Roast your garlic and add the entire bulb. Just squeeze it out into the pot. You will not regret it. Okay, so once you stir up the garlic in there, I'm adding aluminum foil to the top because I do not, my top that goes to this pot has a rubber top on it, which cannot go into the oven. So I'm just wrapping it with aluminum foil and then popping it into that oven that I had preheating at 375. And you're gonna let that cook down for about, start out with an hour. This is what we look like after an hour. It's not done. You know, stir it up a little bit if you like, pop it back in the oven and let it continue to cook for another, I would say like 2 hours. Slow and low. And you already see the evaporation line. That's what I'm pointing out. Like, that sauce is thickening, it's caramelizing, it's beautiful. So that's right, baste your lamb, pop it back in for another 2 hours, and then we're gonna get started on the garlic bread. All right, as you can see, we have the other bulb of garlic, and it is smelling amazing, looking amazing. So we're gonna go ahead and squeeze the entire bulb into a bowl. So right now we're gonna start on our compound butter for the garlic bread. Okay, I know that there are other ways to make it. This is the way that I love to do it because y'all know I am addicted to roasted garlic. So just squeeze all of that out. And after that's squeezed out, we're just gonna mash it down a little bit so that it becomes a nice paste. And it might not look like a lot, but trust me, this flavor is very strong. You don't need a whole lot. 1 bulb is enough, trust me. And for 1 bulb of garlic, we're also going to use 2 sticks of softened butter. You want to make sure the butter is soft, not melted. Because when it's melted, it doesn't solidify the way that we want it to. But when it's softened, you can still kind of manipulate it a little bit. You can incorporate seasonings without compromising the ability to shape the butter the way that you want. Okay, so then we're gonna go in with some parsley flakes, some dry parsley. You can do fresh parsley as well, and some pepper flakes as well. Use as much as you want. And a tad bit of salt. And just stir it on up. It's a little difficult to stir with one hand, so I had to put the camera down and stir it with two. Or we'll use two, I should say. So stir it up really nicely. Get it nice and well incorporated. I don't know what I'm saying to the camera at this point, but it doesn't matter. Let me skip past this real quick. All right, so I'm going to continue to stir. And hubby is having a dance party by himself in the back. So we're going to let him be great while I continue to work on this butter. You want to work really quickly because you don't want the butter to melt. It's already softened, so you don't want it to start turning into a liquid because that defeats the whole purpose of making a compound butter. So once it's nice and incorporated, you're going to get some plastic wrap and lay it out, which is what I'm about to do now. So once it's laid out flat, you want to go ahead and use a spatula so that you can really scrape the edges of the bowl to get all that butter out and in the center of your plastic wrap. Once all your butter is in the center of your plastic wrap, you just want to fold it over and you want to kind of form it into a log. And the reason why you want to form it into a log, at least the reason why I like doing it into a log, is because it cuts better. So you can do little slices. You can use this for garlic bread. You can use it on your chicken. You can use it on your steak. You can literally use this compound butter for anything. It just so happens that I'm using it for garlic bread today. But let me tell you, it's crack. Use it for every single thing you can. It's delicious. Alright, so pop it in the fridge until it's solidified and use it for everything. This is me using it at my dinner party. It was a rush, it was a blur. I couldn't record everything the way that I did, but for the bread, just put the butter on it, pop it in the oven for, 15 minutes at 375. You'll be fine. And then this is the finished product of the lamb stew. Like I said, I served it over a bowl of grits. And I couldn't get my presentation super pretty, but I was at my dinner party, so I was trying to feed people. But it was delicious. And this next clip is just a piece of the bread I snuck to eat while I was in the bed. It was good. So that's the end of this video. If you guys liked it, please give me a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't. Leave any questions or comments down below because I love to hear from you guys. And that's it. So I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye.